The US-made Hawk missile system could fix Ukraine's air defense. Ukraine has an air defense problem. They lack enough air defense systems to protect their vast territory. In fact, as of the date of this video, Ukraine was just struck with a Russian ICBM for the first time. Well, technically, it's an IRBM, an intermediate range ballistic missile. What's up, my YouTube family? Wes O'Donnell here, veteran of the US Army and the US Air Force. And Putin claimed that no air defense system in the world can intercept an ICBM. Absolutely not true. The US has several options. Actually, I was just informed that Ukraine is in talks with the US to get the THAAD, or Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, to help combat future Russian ICBMs and IRBMs. But because Ukraine doesn't have enough air defenses to cover their whole territory, Ukrainian leaders must often make the difficult choice between protecting forces along the front lines or protecting larger cities in the rear. To make matters worse, by the end of 2022, Ukraine started running low on ammunition for its stock of Soviet-made air defense systems. This prompted NATO and Ukrainian engineers to attempt to retrofit NATO missiles onto Soviet-era launchers. They called this hybrid system the FrankenSAM. And I've written about and made a video about the FrankenSAM in the past. I'll put the link to that awesome video on the end card. These hybrid systems did achieve some success throughout 2023 and 2024, but they were only a stopgap measure until Western nations could donate more modern air defense assets. The issue is that Western nations don't have much to spare, and production can't move fast enough to meet Kyiv's needs. So while the US tries to get Ukraine the THAAD, US and NATO allies should look at older systems that might still be useful against Russian air threats. It would play out like this. A Pentagon procurement specialist, probably a major in the US Army, would be tasked to look through paper spreadsheet after spreadsheet for older air defense systems that the United States no longer uses, but still sit in storage. I imagine this Pentagon employee in a dusty basement, surrounded by file cabinets and enlisted helpers, as he reads through reams of paper until he comes across exactly what he's looking for. Bingo, he says as he hands the dot matrix printed page to his subordinate. Let's send them the Hawk. This tedious search likely led him or her to the Redstone Arsenal or the Pueblo Army Depot, where thousands of Hawk air defense missiles sit, waiting for their day to shine. Ukraine now has a few dozen of these Hawk systems, but they need maintenance. So what happened next? Well, the State Department approved an emergency $138 million in foreign military sales for Ukraine to provide these critical repairs and parts for Kyiv's American-donated Hawk missile systems. The US said that Ukraine has an urgent need for the parts to keep missile systems running. This follows a similar small round of $300 million in munition support that the Pentagon announced last year after it was able to convert contract savings to be able to offset the cost of providing aid. Both the State Department and Defense Departments have been seeking ways to continue to get Ukraine support before the new administration takes over in January. So, what is the Hawk? So the MIM-23 Hawk, for homing all the way killer, is a medium-range surface-to-air missile co-developed by Northrop for the launcher and Raytheon for the missile back in 1952. Because early versions of the missile were built before integrated circuits, many of the components were vacuum tube-based tech. Yes, that vacuum tube, the kind found in your father's television from the 1950s. It's because of this antiquated technology that the original missiles had a very short mean time between failures, or MTBF. The MTBF is the predicted elapsed time between inherent failures of a mechanical or an electronic system during normal system operation, and can be calculated as the average time between failures of a system. For the early versions of the Hawk, this MTBF time was only 43 hours. The time was later improved by subsequent upgrades, and Ukraine's donated Hawks are still lethal, albeit not as deadly as the Patriot, which was the Hawk's replacement system as of 1994. Both the Hawk and the Patriot provide medium-range air defense, but the Patriot is much more mobile and can be packed up and moved to different locations in less than an hour, as opposed to the 12+ hours for the Hawk. Even though the US Army deployed the Hawk to Vietnam and the First Gulf War, the Hawk has never actually been fired in combat by American troops. The first combat use of the Hawk occurred in 1967 when Israel successfully fired the missile during the Six-Day War with Egypt. Even though the Americans did not use it during Operation Desert Storm, the Hawk did see action during that war. Kuwaiti air defense units equipped with US Hawk missiles downed about 22 Iraqi aircraft and 1 combat helicopter during the invasion in August of 1990. Ironically, the system later posed a possible threat to the US-led coalition because Iraqi forces captured 3 Kuwaiti Hawks when they invaded Kuwait. Of course, had Iraq used the Hawk against US fighter jets, it would have been a one-and-done shot since the Iraqi army had no way of requisitioning more ammo. Kuwait didn't have a large supply of the $250,000 apiece missiles, and it's not like Raytheon would have sold Saddam anymore. So, is this a case of the US giving Ukraine an obsolete air defense system that is unproven in combat? Not exactly. The US has indeed moved on to widespread Patriot use for many of its air defense needs, but the Hawk still packs a punch, especially against Russia's older 4th-generation fighters and cruise missiles. The Hawks that Kuwait used against Iraq in 1990 proved themselves against the same Russian-made aircraft and missiles currently being used against Ukraine. What's more, a large number of countries still use the Hawk today and can transfer ammo and parts to Ukraine if needed. In fact, Spain donated 6 Hawk systems to Ukraine already. Unfortunately, the Hawk has a rather limited range of only 50 kilometers, restricting it to city and infrastructure defense. This is likely why Kyiv has several of these systems in various parts of the city. The most recent US donation of parts will come from US Army stocks, third country donations, and commercial off-the-shelf components. The maintenance of these Ukrainian systems will be performed by American contractors from Raytheon in Ukraine. Personally, I think the Hawk is undervalued. We should be giving Ukraine thousands of Hawk batteries. This is my argument. The Hawk system is not the best anti-air system, but in large numbers, quantity beats quality. The Hawk's most significant advantage is its high yield in production in the 20th century. There are hundreds of thousands of missiles sitting in storage in allied nations. This means Ukraine could have a virtually unlimited supply of air defense missiles to defend itself against Russian aircraft and drones. I say, let's make them so ubiquitous in Ukraine that every time Russia destroys one, 2 more pop up to take its place. After all, the US is just going to decommission these things eventually anyways. Yes, it's true the Hawk cannot defend against Russian ICBMs or IRBMs, but I would argue that Putin doesn't have many of those. As I sit here and fantasize about a Ukraine with secure skies, I can't help but think about how Hawk's main weakness, the ongoing need for spare parts and maintenance, could be an issue. But if we can solve that challenge, Ukrainian people could finally feel safe and secure from Russia's air threats. And that, my friends, is a problem worth solving. That's it, friends. Subscribe if you're not already. It really helps the channel grow, and it allows me to keep making videos like this and combat Russian disinformation. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Slava Ukraini.